Alright, another draft physics video presentation. Pretty short this one. Looks like it's okay. Anyway, I'm going to read some comments by Stephen Bro. I don't know what to say in terms of a context of a history. Obviously, the guy's a bit of a character. Okay, you have to preface any kind of description, with that condition put in there that you realize he's a bit of a character. So anyway, a few years ago he showed up, could do some experiments, so we had some conversations to see if we could do some experiments proving one way or the other regarding especially the radar experiment. And I never suggested buying equipment. I pointed out how he probably shouldn't be doing that. I even offered to pay some of the cost, even though I didn't suggest buying a bunch of equipment. And then I made videos explaining how we have to engineer the experiment to do it. And then we both found out that these radar devices are kind of they're not regular antennas. They have a diode in them. It's a special little mechanism that creates the frequencies. You can't control what frequency it runs at in a lot of ways, blah blah blah. A lot of little downsides to trying to engineer it to be functional for the test. But anyway, and so he did test his way. He says overtly in the videos to me that he's doing this for his own reasons. I kept saying, well, don't do it for me. And his own curiosity. But that was the extent of our collaboration, with some effort to try to get an experiment that would be decisive one way or the other. And that just didn't happen. And I would argue part of the reason why it didn't happen is because he doesn't prepare and doesn't organize very well. And so, it failed. And then he made some comments on a Holiday video that I think were just offensive, and so I said, fuck you, Steven. And that's the end of the relationship. That's the end of whatever collaboration we have. You can go fuck yourself. And that was it. That's as far as it went with me. And so he's bringing up all this crap in the comments section, making a lot of accusations. They're just fucking false as hell. And so I figure I better respond to some of it. I mean, the liars can do this. They can force the agenda to some extent by just making a bunch of accusations that are just fucking wrong. So fuck this guy. My private videos to him are still on my channel, so I can make those public if he wants to give permission for that. There's nothing in the conversations where I mocked him or did any of this kind of crap, or I treated him in any kind of inconsiderate manner. He's just a lying sack of shit. And the public videos are the public videos. Unfortunately, Holiday made his videos private, so I can't go back and show you his comments on Holiday's video. But I don't remember them exactly. I don't know. I could check I probably don't have a copy. I mean, it might be possible I do, but I don't know if I want to be bothered looking. But anyway, so I haven't read all this shit. I've just heard about him doing all this ragging. So we'll read through some of these rags. Gary's hypocrisy made me laugh. He is the dipstick who thought it was cool to do an impersonation of me. I never did any impersonations of Steve, so that's just an absolute pile of shit. Okay, there's no such thing. Having a more severe disability than I do. I don't know. I mean, I might have made a joke about some particular thing, but I don't recall doing any impersonations. I see that you do impersonations on your channel. I don't do impersonations. Anyway, disability than I do. When he went snooping on Holiday's comments, so he's calling it snooping because I read a comment on Holiday's video. That's snooping, a public comment, and found a comment from me mentioning that I had Asperger's syndrome to Holiday. No, that's not what you said. What you said was something entirely different. But anyway, who also had the same diagnosis. I have a lot more to say about the hypocrisy and sheer number of unbelievable dumb mistakes he has made in his hilarious excuse for science. So apparently this is some sort of, he has a hostility to people who aren't sympathetic to whatever Asperger's is. Okay, this new modern diagnosis for why somebody's an asshole. So it's the universal get out of asshole jail free card is called Asperger's, in my opinion. Okay, so I got pissed off when Holiday suggested I might have Asperger's. And no, I made it very clear, if I'm an asshole, I'm an asshole. It's not because I have asshole burgers. Okay, it's because I'm an asshole. It's because I did something inconsiderate or rude. And Holiday is just using it as some sort of blanket excuse that, well, I can offend people because I don't know what offensive is because I have Asperger's. And it was just a horse shit bullshit, But whatever. If you call that hypocrisy, fine. Okay, I had a disability that prevented me from seeing any of my family members before they died, the ones that died. I mean, like I said, huge, catastrophic effect on my ability to function. And you want to compare that to your Asperger's? Well, go ahead. I don't think there's any comparison to be made, but whatever. I have been patient and even sympathetic. Well, no, you really haven't, because obviously your own rhetoric is revealing that you had a whole different agenda. Trying to help him stop embarrassing himself with endless proclamations that Walter Lewin is not just making a mistake, but somehow rigging experiments and lying. Well, that didn't happen. I didn't say he rigged any experiment. I'm saying they present the experiment that makes their conclusion, the one that fits the most. And they don't show the one that doesn't fit at all. Okay, just like when they show the slit experiments. And just the way Professor Lewin taught the slit experiments, right? As he did the single slit last. Instead of doing it first and then going to the double slit and the multi-slit, he did double slit, multi-slit, and then single slit. That's the engineering I'm talking about. I did my honest best to forgive, well, fuck you, the daft cunt from, so this is another joke. I mean, just because, obviously the sacred word, he's using the sacred word, you're not supposed to do that, for mocking me. So again, this mocking part, play the clip of me mocking you and actually turn the other cheek, as it were. I don't see any of that. And actually try to help the guy. So again, more crap. Once it was over between us. Okay, we didn't have any further communication I'm aware of at all. So that's just a pile of horse shit. I sent him professional slits. Yes, let's understand these. Okay, really old. It's just little tiny thing, and you can see the markers on this one. Even it's obviously one that's been well used. And the others were just the film part. No cardboard border, even just pieces of film. So it all fit in an envelope. So let's understand that's what he sent me. All right, not that that's not something. I mean, they're it's nice professional little slits, but obviously you can't adjust them. You can't do much with them. So obviously they've been demonstrated lots and lots of times that you can find on the internet images produced by those slits. So it's not that helpful. Okay. I didn't need to do that. Well, and he also said that they're all ones he had copies of. So, why don't you make your private videos public, Steve? Where you say those things. I wanted him to have the tools. See, he calls them tools in big words. Like, this is the tool. All right, you have this. You have the answer to the double slit experiment. If you have this, you have the answer. Right, sure you do. To reach better conclusions. He clearly doesn't use them for their intended purpose, as my forthcoming video will show. Excellent. Let's see your forthcoming video. I constantly did ask him to, if you have some disagreement with me, because even back then he kept implying that, well, I don't agree with your theory, but I have my own theory, and I kept saying, well, what the fuck is it? Why don't you tell me what your amazing theory is? Because then maybe we could work out this conflict. Not that we had a conflict, but I mean this conflict, and I don't even know what his intentions are. So, almost every proclamation he has made recently has been wrong. Well, you won't prove any of that, and you won't demonstrate it, so go ahead. Fail all you want. Okay, go ahead. Take that two-slit analysis video and point out where a single shred of that analysis is incorrect. Okay, and have been busy putting together the evidence. Well, get to it already. He should have been checking before shooting his mouth off. Well, let's go ahead and see what you're going to present. Obviously you could play a clip from one of my 5-year-old videos or something, but are you going to have anything about that recent video? No, I don't think so. Unfortunately, it won't embarrass him or shame him to be shown to be wrong. Well, I don't know what that even means. But yes, you won't show that, so go ahead and try, fuckhead. He is a Teflon-coated bona fide idiot. Well, you're the one proving first you haven't said anything. Your previous videos obviously prove nothing. So go ahead, go for it. Alright. He is to physics what whatever this is, Vermica is to a swimming pool. Oh, that's interesting. More to say, gotta go. Go do what? Yeah. Anyway, so here's to Mickey Farley. On fear of getting up off his bony ass and make the slightest bit of effort. So again, he thinks that these are all something you can, like you're going to make a nuclear accelerator in your fucking porch. Not likely. The number of experiments he proposes, everybody else should either should have done or could have done, and he can't even be arsed doing any of merit. So again, I didn't do the radar experiment for the very reason you failed. Okay, because yes, it requires a certain investment in technology. It's technology universities already have. So logically, part of me said you should get somebody who already has the equipment to do the experiment, because there's no point in doing it half-arsed. So getting off your arse to do something in a half-arsed way is dumb-arsey. Alright, brags that he had 70 fringes. Well, I didn't brag about it. Obviously the argument is that the implication is that single slits are uninteresting and don't make much pattern because it's some sort of diffraction phenomenon. It's not wave interference, right? It's not interference patterning. So the only point is to emphasize the point that clearly single slits are not doing something fundamentally different than the double slit. They're doing something fundamentally identical to the double slit. Like it's an achievement that ranks alongside knocking out Mike Tyson. He is a professional dickhead. So again, somehow you're a dickhead for pointing out that this is one of the biggest lies. The way they present their evidence in this fake form, like Professor Lewin, is to imply that single slits are fundamentally different. I mean, it's just such horseshit. That is pretty funny. I don't know what's funny here. Let's see. It would be, I'd pay money to Gary Mosier. See, he has to use my real name again, and Cato thinks that's funny, so we should find out his real name, and we should publish it, because, tit for tat and all that kind of crap. My real name isn't anywhere on my YouTube channel, so it's clearly doxing somebody. And so if anybody knows who Cato the Wiser is, let me know so we can publish his real name. It just seems fair, right? He also refuses to do the laser experiment. So this is, the McCool guy, which was already thoroughly discussed. Where do I do it exactly? Do you have any idea where I live here? I can't. There's no place for me to shoot a laser 100 feet. Okay, without shooting it through somebody else's window. Anyway, just too stupid. All right, so here's Stephen Bro again. There was a bloke in Britain who literally died laughing at a TV comedy called The Goodies. I often wonder if that might happen to me if I keep watching Gary's old videos. So this is a guy who says he supported me for 3 years, right? And now he says they're all laughable videos. So somehow they weren't so laughable back then, but they're laughable now in hindsight. You figured that out. So after you spent thousands of dollars of your money, okay, investing in those videos, you know, in some way or other, you claim you did it for me, for the cause, for whatever those videos inspired in you, and now they're mockable as die laughing videos, huh? And somebody's supposed to believe you're a credible storyteller? Because that story doesn't make any sense, shithead. Okay. DraftScience is a gift that keeps on giving. Well, you can keep saying things like that, but somehow that wasn't your attitude a year ago. So what changed? Asshole. I've seriously never laughed so much as since I discovered his channel. So this is more stuff. I guess I'm the guy who's going to laugh, right? Because I'll say, gee, this is the asshole who wasted two grand or more on experimental equipment that he never did anything with because of my videos. What a sucker. God, what a fucking idiot. Alright, him and Mike Tyson in the ring debating physics made me laugh even harder. Ha ha ha. Just picturing, again, Steve, you have nothing, you know, in many ways going for you as, you know, a non-comic character. I mean, you really are just, you know, by your very existence, kind of a funny little person, all right? And so, you really shouldn't be throwing rocks and, you know, considering how glasses, you know, the house that you live in is. And your situation, by the way. Anyway, just picturing the MC introducing them into the ring, right? Let's just picture you doing anything. And, you know, it's worth a bit of a chuckle. In the blue corner, well, I don't know. What's the point of all this stuff? So we'll move on to the next pile of crap. It does type a lot. Okay, yes, he seems desperate for publicity. So you can't, well, let's see what Cato said. He should buy some YouTube ads. Why should I do that? I mean, I'm totally against this capitalist crap world that you think we all should exist in, okay? All your little shyster Patreon crap and, you know, all your little gimmicks that everybody has to pay for. So why would I give YouTube money for ads? Yeah, that'd be stupid. Imagine him trying to get people's attention in 5 seconds. Well, how do you get attention? I mean, how do you do anything in your existence to show that you're so much better at anything? Right? Have you proven any kind of proficiency as anything at all? You fucking inheritance wealthing sack of shit. Yeah, that's exactly what he is, no doubt. Imagine people of all walks seeing his face in Ty Lopez style carpet bombing with ads. Hey, here's my basement, talking on physics. So all that should matter, right? So again, these are the people who think that it was really good arguments when people talked about how Einstein couldn't know anything because he didn't know how to comb his hair. So because Einstein didn't have well-kept hair, you could doubt anything he said. Those are really good and persuasive arguments. Yeah, right. Anyway. So, Stephen Bro. Yes, it seems desperate for publicity. No, I'm desperate for a rational argument from somebody who can make a rational argument. Something you'll fail to do. Okay, even the most mocking video response would shut him down to the ground because it's not as if it matters whether the majority of people have the slightest clue just how much of what he says is either fibs or fantasy. Well, why don't you quote some of the fibs and the fantasy then? We'll have that argument. But you're too big of a weaselly little sack of shit to do any of that. And again, I can just always play your videos. Why don't you just make your private videos public, and everybody will know what your opinion of me was. You know, how are you so fooled, little shit for brain? Okay, anyway, when he says this width does this and that width does that, well, that's a real persuasive argument. 99% of people haven't the slightest clue. So you draw pictures and you still don't have the clue. Like, obviously you're making a comment on a place where a guy makes a 4-minute video saying this is too challenging an idea. Something's moving this way and something's moving this way. And this one, okay, we'll put little lines on it to identify it. This one goes this way, okay? All right, and this one goes this way. Oh, that's too challenging an idea. How the fuck could that possibly happen? That's too bizarre. I can't understand that. Yeah, you're posting comments on a channel where that's challenging. That's too challenging for you people. All right. I mean, clearly, I think, clearly, Stephen is a little wave nut, okay? And this whole thing really wasn't about getting anywhere rational. He has an irrational, poofy wave view of reality. So anyway, where the hell, how much of this he says either fantasy? Okay. When he says this, anyway, 90% of people haven't the slightest clue. They're just applauding him because he's very good at convincing people he's done real work to draw these conclusions. The work I did was merely, playing all the lectures and pointing out the errors they're making that are overt. I mean, they're undeniable mistakes. When he really mainly set on his bum just thinking. Well, yeah, didn't Einstein do a lot of that also? Yes, that's part of the process, is thinking about why something works or why something doesn't work. And that kind of analysis is very fruitful, actually. Because a person simply can't reach some of his daft conclusions by experiment. Well, they're not going to do it doing experiments the way you do them, which is sloppy. They have to be done well, not badly. Okay, when the experiment shows the exact opposite, so whatever that means. I'm not on about subjective things. You are. I mean really obvious things where any Tom, Dick, or Harry could look at the two patterns Gary says will be equal. Okay, so the two patterns I say will be equal. These are I imagine, this is my guess of what he's talking about. My guess. Patterns that will be equal. So, you have slits, and you could cover one slit, okay, and just have this slit open. And so the light's going to go this way, okay. Go through the slit and you'll get a pattern. And you could argue that if you make this slit small enough, the pattern will be this little, lumpy thing. The argument would be that if I, covered this slit, the pattern will be this little lumpy thing, okay. See, this distance is meters long, and, meters of difference in distance. The camera should be more over there. Oh, that should be slitting out further, one or the other. Well, anyway, it doesn't matter. So this wall is meters away, and so this tiny millimeter difference doesn't create any difference, essentially, in where these two things will look. They'll look like they're right on top of each other. So if I cover one slit, it'll look this way. If I cover the other slit, it'll look this way. All right, it won't change any because this doesn't cause this pattern to move over here. Now, the physicists always draw it like this. Like one slit goes over here and one slit goes over here. This is a millimeter, okay? One slit doesn't go over here and one doesn't go over here, okay? They're right on top of each other. It's a fundamental error. And obviously an error only somebody who hasn't done the experiment would make. Somebody who's actually done it would know, oh yeah, there's no big difference in the distance. All right. They're just applauding him, real work, the conclusions, blah, blah, blah. Uh, let's see. Okay. Gary says we'll be equal and see that they are not even close. So he thinks that they're not even close. I don't know. Nothing to say on that. In other words, he's making crap up that isn't good enough for most people who are never going to check. So Steve apparently has evidence that the 1 millimeter difference creates a very big difference in where these two humps will end up. Well, I'm sure he'll never do that experiment successfully either. Okay. That's why I'm willing to waste countless hours day in and day out doing these tests he should have done. And again, you can go to his channel and watch the quality of the tests he's doing in order to show he didn't do them. Again, I don't need to do them. They're theoretically solid. There's no theory for anything otherwise, and there's no physical evidence of anybody ever getting those results. So why should I conclude, that God's name should be on trees or something? No, I have no reason to believe God's name is on a tree anywhere. He fibbed. So it doesn't, obviously not. I've never wanted to embarrass him, but this nonsense has gone too far now. Well, you're only embarrassing yourself, and you're not going to accomplish anything in all this horse shit, okay, except to fail more completely. So, have at it. Knock yourself out. Alright, some more crap down here, no doubt. As I recall, here's some more crap. Alright, I understand what you say. Once in a while he bring that question. So this is to Null Point, who's an asshole who's arguing his own wacky physics. He doesn't believe in gravity, all kinds of, who knows what he thinks is reality. But he clearly never stays on the subject on any video he ever posts a comment on. So that's why he's just useless. He didn't, not only the fact that he can't figure out to only post one comment on a video, he can't figure out how to use a translation software that actually works. He also can't figure out that his comment should be relevant to the actual video. Anyway, I understand what you say. Okay. I support him for 3 years. I defended him. Why? Because you were fooled by something? What were you fooled by exactly? What was it that totally fooled you to the fact that it was a comedy routine and you should have been just laughing? Anyway, I felt sorry for him. Well, yeah, sorry. Did I ask for any of that? No, not at all. I gave him stuff. Well, again, we showed you this stuff, okay? An envelope with these in it, okay? Like I said, not exactly in pristine shape. Okay, that, whatever that crap is over the one side, and so. But anyway, lovely used. And again, the problem is they can't withstand the heat of a green laser, so they're not entirely useful to me, because I wanted to use the higher frequency laser to get a more detailed pattern to prove different things about how gradual the light goes on and off and all that kind of stuff. And so in that sense, I was a little disappointed, frankly. He has been vile to me over the years. Well, that's just a fucking lie. You basically stuck a knife in my back, and then I said, oh, fuck this asshole. That's what happened. That's the truth, okay? And you won't be able to support any other story. Imitating my disability badly. So go ahead, play that, okay? It never happened in a private video, so all it can do is be in a public video that's on my channel. So go ahead, play the video, or show me what video it is. Okay. Mocking me, calling me dopey, irrelevant, and an asshole. Yeah, and I did that after you commented on a Hafladay's video about me. So yeah, I basically said, well, fuck this asshole. Okay, he's going to say that kind of shit in a Hafladay video? Yeah, fuck you, Steve. I didn't know you were an asshole. You pointed it out to me, and so then you became an asshole. Fine. I'm sick of being insulted by the person I genuinely tried to help, except you overtly worked with Hothliday to attempt to make some kind of argument that I was wrong. So you're working with Hothliday on an opposite theory and then commenting derogatorily about me on his video, and you call that spying because I read a public comment. You're fucking insane, Steve. Okay, you really are. You are a bit loopy. Okay, I helped him to realize he helped me do something. Lewin was not lying. No, again, it's a lie to say it's wave interference in the radar experiment. It's just bullshit. They don't have evidence of wave interference. It's exactly the same mathematical geometry as jamming would be. There's no explanation that proves it's not jamming. That's the argument, fuckhead, that you never really understood because you're a fuckhead. That's why you couldn't do the fucking experiment, right? It's because you never understood it in the first fucking place, you stupid fuckhead. Anyway, I urged him to stop making these false accusations. Well, that's a lie. Where did you do this urging? Where? Play that private video. I'd love to see it, fucking retard. Oh, anyway, he was he was screaming into the camera. Well, okay, so I mean, I don't know. What else is there to say? That Walter Lewin was a cheat. Well, I was telling the audience that, this whole argument they're making doesn't have any validity, okay? Because there is an experiment that'll prove it, and that's the one where you put the antenna in the middle and then you just move the dishes on the side, right? And when you do that, you've eliminated any waves interfering with waves. The waves can't interfere with each other because they're coming from two separate directions. So they can't mix and they can't interfere and they can't do any of that crap. And you get the same fucking pattern. Alright, anyway. Into the camera that Walter Lewin was a cheat. Well, I don't know. I'd like to see that part. Okay, so anyway, it was embarrassing. I tried to spare Garrett. So you keep doing this capital letter crap. That embarrassment. Again, I'm not embarrassed by any of those points being made, okay? That the evidence is being shown to people to make it look like. Well, look like isn't is like, okay? Just like seems like isn't is like. All right, and so they're presenting the evidence in a certain way to make it look a certain way. And if they really think about what the story is, then you realize, no, the real evidence is that it's the same thing as signal jamming. Okay, I performed the experiment he wanted for free. Well, there was no conversation. Again, I'll make my private videos public. I never asked you to do it. I didn't ask you to spend 10 cents on any hardware. I didn't have anything to do with what you did, shit for brain. That was your choice, okay? And then you performed the experiment I didn't ask you to do. I didn't ask you to redo his experiment. I certainly didn't ask you to put an audio tone on the radar. Did I ask you to do that? No, I certainly didn't. You did that. You chose to do it that way because you said, well, it makes it easier to do. Well, that doesn't make it a better experiment, does it? No. Nobody else would do these experiments. Nobody, not even for money. I did them for free. Well, again, I wasn't convinced nobody else will do them. But whatever. I did not charge him. And again, why would you charge me? I didn't ask you for any of this shit. You'll find no evidence of me asking you to do a motherfucking thing, you fucking cunt. I mean, how can somebody say this shit when nobody asked you to do any of this shit? Alright. He liked me when I did his work for free. The videos are public, okay, where I point out who you are and the extent of my interest. Alright, and so yes, of course I had nothing negative to say about you because I didn't know you were a backstabbing little fucking trolly weasel. God damn. He hated me when the experiments proved him wrong. So that's just a fucking lie again. There'll be no video he can prove that with. I hated you when you backstabbed me, you little fucking weasel, with the Hothliday bullshit. where you gave Hothley reason to sit there and argue that there was some sort of real evidence of something that you demonstrated when you didn't demonstrate a fucking thing in your experiments. All right. I spent £2,000, again, an insane amount of money in my opinion, and I can provide you a private video where I'm telling him you really shouldn't be spending this much money. All right? So I'm cautioning him against buying this hardware, and then he's the one arguing, no, I want to. So, it's all on him, that irrational mush. He bought all this used equipment. It half worked. That was all his choice. Anyway, £2,000 wasted. Yes, but you couldn't do the fucking experiment the right fucking way. The way I fucking asked you to fucking do it, you fucking idiot. Anyway, he refused to accept the results. You didn't get any fucking results, shit for brain. Anyway, he said I hadn't tried hard enough. I didn't say you didn't try hard enough. I said you didn't do it the fuck right. You didn't try well enough. He said my efforts were crap. Well, that's what they were. I took hundreds of hours to learn what equipment to buy and to mend most of it. Yes, and again, all of that was on him. I never asked him to go anywhere near eBay and buying a bunch of dicey, frequency counting crap. I wouldn't even have gone that direction. If you're going to spend that much money, I would have told you to buy a really good oscilloscope, because then you could use it for lots of other things. You idiot. Anyway, and learn how to do the experiment. He was ungrateful. Again, that's a lie. So there's no ingratitude until you stab me in the back, fucking weasel. Okay. Now he pretends the experiments were never done. I don't pretend any such thing. If you would have done some kind of experiment that was meaningful, then I could sit there and put the results on my website and show it in my own videos. But what did you demonstrate that it is all decisive? Nothing. All right. He wanted my time. He wasted my time. No, you wasted mine, apparently. I was generous. He was ungrateful. You're a fucking backstabbing little dopey weasel, so fuck you. Anyway, now he calls me dopey and irrelevant. I called you eccentric back then. And yes, now I found out your eccentricity really is you're a fucking kook. Yeah, okay. But back to what you said. Once in a while, bring that question. That's what I thought for 3 years. So again, you're saying somehow you were fooled, like somehow my videos changed, or what changed that all of a sudden you decided to play this it's mockable game. So you couldn't tell it was mockable back then. Oh, I see. Then I started to realize these were not his questions. Oh, so now he's saying my videos are unoriginal. Good luck with that, kook. All right, he makes other people's work sound like his own. So again, where's he going to go with this? He can't go anywhere rational with this. I mean, I've essentially made these, observations where I discover something while I'm making the videos. I mean, it's just so obvious. All right. He deleted my comment about variable double slits. I didn't delete your comments. I've blocked you, you fucking troll. All right. I have many interesting videos of variable slit experiments. No, you don't. I mean, they're really not that interesting, okay? I thought the one you did where you were mocking, okay, the science documentary was funny, but the rest of your videos aren't that useful. He said it was irrelevant. I don't know whether I said that about any of those specific videos. So go ahead and prove I said the slit videos you did were irrelevant. Because I didn't say that. They're good videos as they go, but they don't say anything new. They don't provide any information that's useful. So he did not read it out before deleting it. So just more horseshit. Then he bragged about it being his idea 3 weeks later. My idea was, what, three weeks later? So go ahead and prove any of that horseshit. saying, why had Walter Lewin not thought of it? Saying there is a lack of creative thought. Not thought of what? So we don't know what the idea is that he's talking about. I played Walter Lewin doing the slit experiments, years ago. So that certainly couldn't have happened recently, retard. Alright. Yes, there is a lack of creative thought and a lack of honesty in Gary's pretending I had not told him about my creative experiments. So what is that? That's just more horseshit. Prove it then. Go ahead, just make your private videos to me public, and then we'll find out what you told me. You didn't tell me shit, fuckhead. Even though he deleted my message. Well, whatever. That's, again, just more horse shit. I always save them and record all videos just in case. Well, fine, good. Many people, not just Gary, cheat their way through life. They disgust me. Well, again, go ahead. Post whatever it is you say, your magical comment that had all this magical great stuff in it. If I deleted it, it was obviously because it was rude and obnoxious, and I said, fuck you. But if I did it in a public video. So I certainly didn't do that in any private videos. So this is just more horseshit stories. He even brags about path length difference being his idea. I don't even know what that means. I brag about path length difference being his idea. No, it was my idea to draw it in a rational way. That's all I can possibly say. That physics keeps talking about assigned theta and angles and all that horse shit. And the real point is it's just as simple as two lines from the points. One line and a second line. And that this difference is the entire difference. And this difference dictates how many wavelengths are in this difference is exactly how many notches you'll end up here. So however big your wave is, right? If you were making a wave, okay, this tells you how many notches are in it and how small the sections will be. The more notches you have in here, the smaller the notches, here. So for your theory to be right, this idiotic wave theory, right, then in the double slit experiment, you would have to believe one of the waves was here, small notches, really only 2 notches or 3 notches across the entire field, big giant notches, right? And here, big distance, okay, lots of little notches fit in here, lots of wavelengths, so you have a bunch of little notches. So you make, your theory is that 2 waves interfere with each other, one of them that goes right through the barrier, okay, and doesn't go through the empty space at all, and the other wave goes from these 2 points, okay, and somehow ignores the barrier altogether. And those 2 waves interfere with each other and create the pattern. Is that your theory, retard? Well, it sucks. Yeah, it sucks. Your theory sucks. Anyway. Let's see. Alright, he brags about path length difference being his idea. Right, it's my idea to just recognize it's just it's not an infinite experiment, it's a finite experiment happening in a finite amount of space. And therefore you can know exactly how many bars are being created. It is ancient. Okay, so why doesn't any of the physics professors know that it's ancient then? Why don't they teach it that way? Why? Oh, because it wouldn't be consistent with wave theory, that's why. So it's exactly my point. I can illustrate it where it's obviously waves doesn't make any sense. It's silly. The wave goes right through the impediment. That's retarded. Okay, that's retarded. I mean, nobody would fall for that. The wave doesn't go through the openings. Instead, it goes right through the middle impediment. The wave doesn't go around the needle. It goes right through the needle. That's the argument, right? For it to work, to be rational. That's what you'd have to believe. For it to be a wave as a solution. Anyway, it's ancient, that knowledge. Anyway. It's a wave theory. So again, a wave theory that can't possibly work. Small distance, big pattern. Big distance, little pattern. Game over. Waves don't work. Okay? Point sources, surfaces work. Surfaces work. Surfaces explain the experiment. Waves do not. Anyway. And he gets away, he pretends it is his idea, okay? He gets away with it because most of his fans do not know what path length difference is. Well, that's why I'm showing it to them. That all it means is there's 2 points have a distance from each other. And that difference in distance is in the entire creation of the length difference in the 2 lines you're going to draw from those 2 points. Because most of his fans don't know what the length difference is. Again, so obviously that's why I draw it, and then it's pretty obvious. Hell, you could even buy a teaching device. So he puts that in bold text. So why isn't this teaching device used anywhere? Why isn't there a single video on all of YouTube or anywhere on the internet or anywhere in all those two-slit discussions, all those pages and websites discussing the two-slit experiment? Why isn't this teaching device mentioned by a single solitary one of them? And only you know about it. I mean, why has it been covered up? Why has it been thrown to some archaic thing that you saw as a kid or something? I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying, yeah, sure, maybe it does. Maybe, in the 60s, they might have still had rational physics. Maybe all of this hyper crap about Copenhagen's and all this other stuff hadn't really caught on all that much. But frankly, I didn't hear much about it when I was a kid. I didn't hear much about wave interference and entanglement and all that kind of crap. So maybe they were still thinking about it mechanically. Okay, so maybe there is such a tool. But how come nobody ever in the modern world references it except for you? I mean, I can honestly say this is the first reference I've ever seen to any such tool. Anyway, based on the exact same idea, 2 rulers, the spacing between which can be adjusted, so fringes can be calculated. So they have a tool where you have 2 rulers, which I was talking about, the notches on rulers, right? Now look, he's saying, I guess he's implying that somehow I knew about this. I have no knowledge of any such tool. But apparently it was a tool where you could adjust where the 2 rulers are. You could have a hole in the ruler. So you have one ruler with a hole in it and one ruler with a hole in it. Okay, and now you could move the rulers to these different locations, right? And you could see that, when you move this ruler to this location, you move this ruler over to this location, that this one, is shorter, okay? And that the notch here would be right on one of the ruler notches of the other ruler. And so when the 2 notches line up, that would be on. And then it would be off. And that would be on. And that would be off. And if they have such a tool that would isolate exactly how many bars there are, right? It'd tell you exactly how many are possible, in the full arc. So it would completely answer the 2-slit experiment in the sense you could know exactly how big your bars are and why there's so many of them. Why didn't you make a video about it? Why didn't you answer these questions? If you had the answer to the question, if you had 2-slit mathematics that gave you the exact number of bars, that told you exactly how many there are, then why wouldn't you say so years ago? Because frankly, that was one of the questions that mystified me. Because, I had this perception that the bars go forever. Because they always talk about this straight line that they projected on. So I had no idea that this was a finite pattern. I mean, it's amazing. Anyway. So Thomas Young, let's see, it's a very old idea. Thomas Young's, I guess. Well, if it was Thomas Young's, then you would have really figured out that, the 2-slit pattern is really just made by these 2 interior rulers, right? these two interior rulers would obviously make the big pattern. All right, the big blobs. And these two outer rulers would obviously make the small pattern. So then they would have already known all that. And this wouldn't have been any kind of mystery. People wouldn't have written thousands of forum pages and all the other discussions of the two-slit experiment because it would already be answered question. We wouldn't have to wonder how the pattern was made. Amazing. No, not Newton. So again, I guess he has something against Newton. Most of them do not know copper is not paramagnetic. Okay, so the trick here is you got to be really careful about how you use these words. Paramagnetic, diamagnetic, all this stuff. So I'm sure in the past I've made some mistakes between diamagnetic and paramagnetic. But clearly I haven't made any mistake about the conversation. You know, there's this simple idea. You take a piece of copper, a solid piece of copper, and you take a magnet, okay, north-south, and you are south-north, and you allow the magnet to swing into the hunk of copper, and the magnet will slow down, almost, you know, progressively slow down, and it won't even hit the copper. Okay, so even though it's going at a high speed, it won't hit it. The faster you make it go in, actually, the more force you'll get back at it. So there's a repulsive force created by the copper in the sense that it doesn't make a new magnet like a piece of iron would. A piece of iron would make this a south pole and this a north pole. Okay, so that's paramagnetism because it's complementary in the sense that it'll create attraction. But diamagnetism is when it's opposite. So this becomes a north and this becomes a south. So these norths repel each other, and it really just has to do with about compressing electrons, in my opinion. And obviously, when you compress the electrons, you make the electrons stronger, okay, more dense, and so it looks like a north pole. Okay, it's a temporary magnetic condition, though, not a permanent one. So we'll continue. So I might have said paramagnetism in the past to talk about the thing that was the opposite of ferromagnetism. See, paramagnetism is another way of saying ferromagnetism, I suppose, because it's complementary. But it's there really shouldn't be three different words. There should be just paramagnetism and diamagnetism. They shouldn't even put the ferret in there because that just complicates things. But anyway, let's get to it. Most of them do know that copper is not paramagnetic. So again, I've never suggested copper produces anything but the opposite magnetism. I've never displayed it any other way. I've never shown it any other way. I've never drawn any other conclusion. It doesn't create attractive magnetism, complementary. He lies that it is to support his terrible theory. So that's just like I said, I might have used the word inappropriately, but I've never drawn it inappropriately. So fuck you, liar. Okay, copper is diamagnetic. Yes, it creates the opposite magnetic field. He does not know the difference. I won't argue that I haven't made a mistake using the words in the past. But anyway, doesn't matter. Aluminum is paramagnetic. Yeah, aluminum's just like copper. And I never showed it any other way. I never argued for anything other than that. I never argued that aluminum is different than copper. And I never argued that copper is like iron. Never happened. Okay, Gary does not know very much at all. Well, he didn't prove that. He makes most of it up. Well, everybody makes everything up. At some point or other, everybody had to make it up. Before there was a round wheel, somebody had to make one. And he had to make it in his head first. Shit for brains. Do you know how a loudspeaker works? Gary does not. So even what a loudspeaker is. Do you mean a megaphone? Yeah. So we can go through all this kind of crap. There's the history of amplifying devices, right? So, I mean, obviously when Edison created the first talking machine, So there's been all kinds of different, you can go back to the Bell telephone, there's lots of ways to amplify sound, but the idea is basically is to, take something where vibrations become resident in the material, and therefore you can create more of them. So you take this big round thing, I have a little hole in the end here, right, and you allow this surface to magnify the sound by creating more and more vibrations, by sympathetically vibrating with whatever vibration you put in here. And this can be connected or disconnected, it can have tension in it. There's lots of different ways to create a mechanism that allows energy, a small amount of energy, to be amplified. Mechanical amplifiers. Okay, anyway. Gary does not. He says there is a steel rod attached to the speaker cone. There can be. There is not. Check yourself. Google it or take one apart. It just has to do with the fact that the tension has to be put into the paper. Okay, and most of them rely on some sort of tension. That is, you pull it and it bounces back. A rubber band kind of effect. All right. He says the speaker totally different than they do. He is wrong. So again, all speakers are the same, and they're all the ones Steve has. He says the steel rod is pulled into the solenoid. This is a fantasy, and then released like an elastic band. Well, the fact is that they all depend usually on just pushing one way. Faster than sound itself, causing a mini sonic boom. Yes, that's the truth. Now, it's ironic that you think that's not the truth, but yes, all sound is in fact created by something moving faster than the speed of sound. I drop that chalk, it makes an obnoxious sound. Why? Because it compresses a bunch of air as it's hitting the ground, between the two material objects. And that stuff is forced out very, very quickly. So the last little bits of molecules before the chalk hits the surface are forced out really fast, and it's that very fast movement that causes this little mini sonic boom. You have to move something. It's if I want to put a wave in a rope, I have to move my hand faster than the wave will move in the rope. And if I don't move my hand faster, there won't be any wave through the rope. It's just the rule of making a wave in a medium, is you have to disturb the medium faster than the wave moves through the medium. Alright, and so I'd love for you to prove that's not true somewhere. So why don't you do an experiment proving that a movement slower than the speed of sound can create sound. Okay. He says that is the only way sound is made. He's an idiot, he's an idiot, he's an idiot. Well, that's a really great experiment. Oh no, really it isn't. And a vile person to other people I know. Like who? People who have helped him for 10 years. Who would that be? People who say they will never watch him again. Who are these people? Because he does not deserve good people helping him anymore. So who are these people? Oh, a bunch of the secret troll society. Oh, I get it. Again, once in a while he bring that question. Whatever. It is surprising how often we later find out I was someone else's question. So this is, again, just this bizarre accusation that somehow in this whole process I've stolen somebody else's question somewhere. That the questions didn't arise in the natural process of me questioning the physics. It's just such a despicable accusation, that, for what purpose? It's just this attempt at character assassination, as if I've done something dishonest. And it's just so disgusting a lie that anybody can make up. I mean, it's disgusting. I can just say that, he paid you to say this stuff, right? Foully, okay, Fartley, who you insulted just a couple of weeks ago, he paid you. to say what you're saying. I mean, I can make that accusation. It's really easy to make. But you should have some proof if you're going to make that kind of accusation, you weasel. Anyway, someone else's observation. For instance, he claims that no one ever mentions... so saying something, no one ever mentions something is the same. Anyway, that two patterns are only 1 millimeter apart. There aren't two patterns. Sorry. I mean, there aren't two patterns created by two slits. See, this is where you're too stupid again. So let's just explain it again. Single slits by themselves make a certain pattern. Okay? And it's going to fundamentally be different when they're in proximity. So if I have a slit over here, and then I have another slit over here, okay, and they're far enough apart, they'll create separate patterns and do their separate thing. Okay? The point is you can never mix these two patterns. The point is these are points where light gets scattered from a source. Okay, so you're now combining sources. You're taking the same photons, okay, and putting them through the same experiment. You don't have two unique light sources anymore. You have one light source. So actually, some photons will actually have pieces broken here and here, when this middle impediment is less than a wavelength. Okay, kind of rare, but can happen. So again, you're not combining this pattern with this pattern. You're combining, okay, this distance, 2 points that are scattering from this location and this location, with ones that are scattering from this location and this location. Now you can draw that any way you want. You can draw that as this location and this location and this location and this location, right? This slit and this slit. But the point is the only way to understand it in terms of the phase, in terms of how many wavelengths there are, is to understand this is the difference in the distance that's going to matter. So you can have, in other words, these two slits individually create just two sources. Okay, when I combine them, I create not only just two sources, but a third source and then a fourth source. So it's, I can combine pieces from this one, and this one, 3, which you can't do as either individual slits or two slits. You can never not have 4 sources, the 3-source solution. And so in a way you could argue that that's the distinction. But again, you're the one not understanding that these distances are just vectors, and there's actually bits of photon traveling those vectors. Your wave theory can't do that because your waves won't be in these locations. And even if you could put your waves in these locations, waves in these locations won't create complementary additions in the locations that will create the pattern. I don't know how exactly. Probably a better way to say that, but anyway. Let's do this again. Once again, bringing that question to us. For instance, he claims no one mentions that the two patterns are only 1 millimeter apart. I've clearly played in the video that people like Leonard Susskind draw it as if the two humps would be inches or feet apart from each other when the slits are only 1 millimeter apart, and that's stupid. It's a fundamentally stupid mistake they're making. That's a fact, idiot. Rubbish. Michael Van Briesen mentioned it in several years ago. So go ahead and prove it isn't a video I already played of Michael Van Briesen. But okay, I don't know. Check for yourself. Look at Michael Van Briesen's video about path length difference. Oh, good. He has the video. So again, I've played the Van Briesen videos, in my videos.
The new house is amazing.
Except there's this
rat problem.
Except this is ad problem.
Welcome to iLectureOnline, and now we're going to start a new series in a lot more detail about light interference. So here we have an example where we have a double slit, and it's called Young's double slit because the experiments were first done by Young and the write-ups were done by Young in how light...
Okay, so this is hilarious because he's not even come close to getting the two-slit pattern, right? So he's doing it from the Young perspective again, where you're not even combining the two patterns. You don't have the stuff in the middle, then the two fringes and the fringe, the envelope pattern. So he's not even going to be dealing with the envelope. So again, what is he even talking about? There's nothing unique in this drawing at all, beyond what has been drawn by every other physicist. So what the fuck is he talking about? Is he going to draw these two lines going this way? No, he's doing the sine angle theta bullshit again. So he's not demonstrating that in space these two lines are exactly the same length going all the way around. He's not showing this as a curved pattern the way it should be displayed on a curved surface. So this is nothing new. Oh, amazing. You'd use this as an example. So I'll make a video doing Van Briesen again just for fun if that's what you think I should do. I don't know if it was that series of videos, but I mean I played a whole series of his videos. He explains clearly that the two beams remain the same distance apart, 2.5 minutes or so into the video. Okay, so 2 minutes in. All right. How could there be two patterns at the same? I mean, you have to be talking about covering one slit and then covering the other slit, wouldn't he? Yeah, he would.
We have a dark spot, then we have a bright spot, dark spot, bright spot, and so forth, and that's called an interference pattern. The question now is, why do we have an interference pattern, and how do we actually analyze it, and how can we find the intensity of the light at various locations on the screen relative to where the two slits are? Well, for one thing, what we have to realize is that there is a path length to travel from the slit to a spot on the screen.
All right, so that's sort of true, but the more important is the difference in the path length. And again, he's not going to understand the two widest ones are the ones that matter. But let's play it.
And notice the spot directly across from the center. And what I want to show is that even though the way I have this drawn here, it doesn't appear that those two lines are parallel. In essence, they really are, because as I've drawn here, the distance between the slit is usually very, very tiny, and the distance across here is very large. Usually the ratio is something.
Right, so again, this isn't the same example at all. This isn't like where, you cover one slit and there's a pattern, and then you cover the other slit and the pattern's in a different location. So he still hasn't figured out that's the one I'm finding fault with as a silly drawing. So obviously he didn't do that in this. But yeah, clearly he does understand that they're very small distance apart. But again, that's not the example I was talking about at all. So if you want me to replay Feynman and Leonard Susskind and Shakar all drawing it wrong, I can do that again. Anyway. He explains very clearly that two beams remain the same distance apart 2.5 minutes or so into the video. Only Gary thought they spread wider apart. No, that's just a lie. So again, this is the drawing. I mean, this has been done so many times. It's almost insane that I have to explain this again. Okay, but they do this with the idea of covering one of the slits. So they draw it this way, right? And they talk about, well, if I cover this slit, the pattern is here. Okay. If I cover this slit, okay, then the pattern is here. Okay, they draw the two way far away from each other. Okay, way far away from each other. That's what the point is, Steve, you fucking idiot. Okay, it's when they do this, covering the slit idea. That is the one that's stupid. Because obviously these two patterns wouldn't be in different locations. You would see, they say you would see this, and then you would see this, and then they try to combine those two, when what they should be combining is, obviously, just this plus this. Okay, there. What does this plus this look like? What is one of these covered? It looks like that. One of this one's covered. It looks like that. Yeah, it's exactly the same. except it's a millimeter difference. So you didn't even get the point because you're stupid. Alright. Alright. Gary's claim that physicists haven't realized this is ridiculous. Okay, so I can play it again. I could show it again. Is there any point? He can't even understand it, the stupid fuck. Alright, anyway. Mike also explains path length difference in this series of videos. Well, anyway, Gary does not call it path length difference because people might realize that it is not his clever invention. I don't know. Have I not called it a path length difference? I don't know. I don't think it's a very cool jargon. Okay, it's a difference in distance, but that's for sure. It is part of wave interference theory. No, it's part of vector theory, frankly. It's part of jamming theory. It's part of a straight line geometric understanding of how force travels in straight lines. It's perfectly consistent with scatter theory. Okay, anyway. Not his. He has borrowed it. Okay, so this is more crap. He has also borrowed the term phrase from wave theory to try to make his broken photon garbage sound legitimate to people who have never worked on actual phase-related waves. So more horseshit. So clearly this was his bias right from the beginning. He's a wave nut. He never said that to me. He never told me he's totally invested in wave theory. So, his theory is pure garbage dressed up in wave clothes. Well, that's just too silly a thing to say. Couldn't be more obviously and hostilely obnoxious to the whole idea of waves. I think it's a silly idea. I think it has no relevance whatsoever. I don't think there's even wave theory in waves, okay? The ocean isn't really waving. It is straight line forces traveling through molecules of water. And just like in the air, there's a bunch of straight line forces attempting to move through the medium. Okay, there's individual atoms hitting individual atoms. It isn't a fucking wave. And the only thing that makes it wave-like is the fact that the atoms have tension. If they weren't stuck to each other, this whole thing would be irrelevant. Because there wouldn't be any such thing as a silly wave. Anyway. He's even tried to pinch standing wave theory. So this is just such a lie also. So he can claim it proves his daft theory. In other words, he tried to get me to do the... yeah, I tried to get you to do the experiment that would demonstrate something, and you wouldn't do it. Right, great. So at least he's admitting that I did try to get him to do the experiment that would matter, and he couldn't fucking goddamn give a shit about doing that. He couldn't be arsed. Alright, he tried to get me to do the standing demonstration of standing waves. Well, I never did that, obviously, and I never called them waves, and so none of that's the truth. But yes, I did try to get him to do the experiment that would prove the point, that you can't have wave interference if the two waves never interact with each other. So if you do the radar experiment by shooting the radar from a gun here and a gun over here, and you put the receiving antenna between, and then you just move one of these this way or this way. So these are being fed by the same signal. Same signal. Okay, it goes into both of those. And the truth is if you move one of these dishes, okay, you can turn the signal on, off, on, off, on, off. Okay, and it will be signal jamming, will be what's causing it. But clearly what you'll see is that this wave can't possibly interfere with this wave because the two waves are never in the same space. So clearly some stupid theory that the two waves need to bang into each other and interact and create wave functions. Where's your wave functions here? There's no room for a wave function. No wave functions to interfere with each other. So this experiment would prove, okay, that it's not wave interference. And it's just signal jamming. They're out of phase, and your receiver can't tell the difference. They're both hitting the surface. It just can't tell. Because when they're out of phase, it can't resolve either signal. So he calls that a standing wave when it's not. I mean, to have a standing wave, you have to reflect off of something. Standing waves can only happen in containers. Without a container, there's no standing wave. All right. Broken garbage. Sounds legit. People never worked with Leia. His theory is okay. Even tried to get me to do a standing wave demonstration of standing waves, but with microwaves, saying that if there are nodes and antinodes, this proves his theory. So he's calling them nodes and antinodes when no, they're the fringe pattern. So again, so this is more just playing with word games. It's always about phase, and so when they're out of phase, he's calling it antinode. Okay, it's just a horse shit. It has nothing to do with standing waves. Anyway, no, it does not. It is a standard demonstration of waves, two speakers facing each other. Yeah, exactly. And so there's no place for any interference, is there? Oh, that's right. There's no place for interference. A microphone in the middle, moved between the speakers, gets quiet, then loud, then quiet again. This is a wave phenomenon. So again, it's clearly not wave interference, though, is it? No. Gary thinks it proves his broken photons codswallop. Well, I think it demonstrates that any theory that two particles are hitting each other, or two wavicles, or two wave functions are collapsing, or any of that horse shit is sort of out of the game because the two waves aren't interacting at all. Okay, and an idiot he is. Anyone can be stupid, but Gary abuses the privilege. Yeah, whatever. This is all brilliant, isn't it? I forgot to link to the standing wave demo. There are many versions of it that Gary thinks is his idea for proving his theory with microwaves. I'm saying that it's a pretty convincing circumstance that if I could create this, if I could do the same thing with light, wouldn't this whole conversation be over? So I mean, I guess there's theoretically, I don't see how you could possibly do it. I'd have to think about it. But I mean, if I could do this with this light experiment, right? If I could somehow split the beam, okay, have the beam go in two directions and then come back from two sources, so it travels exactly the same path and stays in phase, and then have it go to a detector. And then all I have to do is move the distance of the antenna from the detector in this direction or this direction, and I turn the light on and turn the light off. That'd be pretty persuasive evidence that there couldn't be wave interference because there's no place for the light to interact with itself. There's no waves interfering. You get it? I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? I mean, how can he make this argument? It's just, I don't really understand. It's just so bad. But anyway, so I don't know what video this is. We'll see. Old MIT. Standing waves between two loudspeakers.
Hey folks, I'm Joe Biden. I'd like to ask you to join my campaign.
I sort of remembered something, or I forgot something. They're all too old. Okay. All right. So anyway, so the funny thing is, I played Professor Lewin doing this type experiment, and Professor Lewin even admits. Okay, so in one video he does the same experiment with an antenna and turning it, and then going to different locations. And the funny thing is, in one video he's saying it proves standing waves, and this does the same demo essentially, and then says it proves interference. So it's just kind of funny how he's using the same demo to prove two different things. So obviously this is an obvious fact that sort of demonstrates that you're saying the two waves are banging into each other. They're not banging into each other, are they? They're just out of phase. So, I win, I think. All right. P.S. I brought yet some more microwave equipment to repeat the so-called radar experiment so the arrogant git would have nothing left to complain about. But he will invent something to complain about, an excuse why the experiment is still not done good enough. Well, yeah, you haven't done it, so go ahead. do the experiment, and again, if you just do it like that sound experiment, right, then the game's over, isn't it? Isn't that the end for your wave interference theory? It's obviously just two signals that are out of phase, and when they're out of phase, they can't be deciphered. In the sound example, obviously, when they're, I guess the phase is just having to do with nullifying the audio tone. You know, so one's going up while the other one's going down, and the two signals end up being nothing. You know. So it's a little bit different, but it's the same idea. There's obviously mechanical force created by sound. The actual medium is moving. There's no theoretical medium for radar and light. So they can't physically actually be physically changing some part of the world. But clearly for the microphone. See, I guess the microphone, the other catch to the microphone is the two sounds do actually interfere with each other before they get into the microphone. I mean, you could argue. Where the antenna example is, no, it has to hit one side of the antenna and hit the other side of the antenna. They're not going in the same hole, okay, for the antenna. All right. So I think that's hopefully the last of the retards comments. Here's one more. Thanks. Need a bit more information before I can comment in a helpful way, whatever his comment would be. But he's an idiot. I will need to eat. Long day. Blah 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 blah. Just all horse shit. I'm going dizzy, so I had better go eat. I may reply later. So he is a bit of a manic compulsive, disorder person also. Alright, so anyway, but I'm just, all these accusations these people make, they got no evidence for them. This whole argument that I plagiarized something or stole something, or, it's just such a pile of shit. And, just the weasels. And, for this asshole to say I was in some way ungrateful or that I some way cheated him in some way, it's just such a lie. You cheated me, fucker, by playing some game that you were on my side when really you were on your side. Okay, and that's all it was ever about, was your side. And you showed that as soon as Hofladay floated into view, and then you, switch sides, so to speak. So, fuck you. And you think I should somehow, again, calling it spying on you because I read your fucking comment on his video is just a joke. It's so silly. So anyway, there's nothing else to say. So it's nice that all the trolls are here, so that's good. They're all in one little fucking location. All these lying pieces of scum are all in the same place, so that's good. Kato and Null Point and Mindless Marbles and, Moyule, whatever the fuck that is. So anyway, that's enough of a video. So we'll see where it goes and such. Till the next time. But yeah, I'm not going to let them force my agenda. So yeah, I will attempt to minimize how many videos I waste on these assholes and their false accusations.